Meeting to order. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone. We'll get right down to some business here. We have
Peter DeGraff is here.
Peter DeGraff. We'll have Peter go first, and Peter's to describe a little bit about the Vergennes Patton Water District upcoming bond vote. Chuck, right in.
Just to start out with introductions, I'm the president of Otter Creek Engineering down in Middlebury. We've been working with the Vergennes Patton Water District for about 2 years now, helping them develop a plan for making improvements to the plant. Just by way of a little bit of background, the plant was built in 1973. It's located out on Adams Ferry Road on the shore of Arnold Bay. Plant draws water from the mouth, the deeper section of the mouth of Arnold Bay, treats it, filters the water, disinfects it, and then pumps it up through Patton and up to the 2 water storage tanks that the city has. The plant on average treats about 650,000 gallons per day, serves obviously Vergennes and Patton, but it also has customers in Ferrisburg and some in Waltham. At 650,000 gallons per day over the last 37 years, the plant's produced roughly about 8 billion gallons of water. Needless to say, the facility is tired. Basically, the main system components are all the original. It's the 37-year-old filter system. For the most part, 37-year-old pumps, air handling system, electrical system. Typically, these facilities are designed.
Excuse me.
Sure.
I have to apologize. I've had a viral infection, and I'm really having trouble hearing. Could you speak up just a bit, please?
Certainly. Typically, these facilities are designed for a 25 to 30-year life cycle. This, having gone 37 years, you can tell the plant operators in the district board have gotten quite a bit more use out of it than really what it was designed for. They had some preliminary discussions with the filter manufacturers that built these filters 37 years ago, and the filter manufacturers are pretty shocked that their units were still in service. So the task that we had with the board was to come up with a plan for how to make improvements to the project, what's the best approach to improving the facility and get it ready for the next 35, 40 years of use. We did a preliminary engineering study and basically looked at a bunch of different alternatives, building a plant on a new site, putting an addition on the existing plant, doing kind of spot improvements, limited improvements, not going through the whole plant. And fundamentally, our recommendation, and the board concurred, was to go through the whole plant and basically bring it up to today's standards from an energy efficiency perspective, from a water treatment perspective, and get it ready for the next 35 to 40 years. So over the last 6 to 8 months, we've been preparing design drawings and really fleshing out what that would constitute. Basically, we'll be going through the entire plant, replacing the electrical system with new more efficient electrical components, new power service, new lighting, more energy efficient lighting, more energy efficient motor drives on the pumps, completely new filtration system that'll be significantly more effective at meeting water quality standards than the current filtration system is. A whole new HVAC system, which is effectively non-existent right now. You go down into the basement of the plant on a hot, humid summer day, and it's like a rainforest down there. We'll be dealing with that. Upgrading the heating system in the plant. Portions of the plant still have the original electric heat. It was built back in the days when electricity was cheap and they were still putting electric heat in. New roof for the facility. 37-year-old roof is starting to leak. And we're also, in certain parts of the building, we're also going to be insulating it, making it more energy efficient that way as well. The building's too large. It's actually a four-story building. It doesn't look it from the road, but it's a 4-story building. Actually goes a story down below lake level. We'll be insulating the main kind of operator occupied rooms to make those more energy efficient so we can keep them more easily at reasonable temperatures. Bottom line, what's all it's going to cost? The board has advertised a bond vote for August 4th for $5.1 million. The money will come from two sources, one through rural development, USDA rural development.
Upstairs, okay, thank you.
$3.1 million from rural development. That's a 40-year loan at 4.125% interest. And $2 million from the State of Vermont Water Supply Division. And that'll be a 20-year 3% loan. This is Travis. Travis is on the Water District Board. So basically what we want to do tonight is just come in and give you a little bit of background about the project. Most importantly, give you the opportunity as a board and as individuals who are going to be paying the water rates to ask any questions. What does that bond amount mean? What do those loan terms mean? We've calculated that the average single-family home in Vergennes and Patton will be typically paying about $368 per year. That's a fair increase over what you are now. On average, a typical single-family home pays about $175 per year. So it is a fair increase, but we feel it's a cost-effective and appropriate solution for making improvements to the plant.
What was that again?
$368 per year for a typical single-family home with the project. Yeah, a little over $1 a day. Just for comparison purposes, the Water Supply Division keeps kind of a running average on what larger size public water systems pay for water throughout the state. And on average, water systems around the state pay about $400 per year. So you're still in the average range. There are a number of systems that pay $500, $600, $700 a year. Those are typically smaller systems that have a smaller user base. They don't have as many people to spread the cost amongst. But your rates are still, although it may seem like a big jump, they are still pretty reasonable for what typically people pay for water. So that's my quick blurb in a nutshell. Does the board have any questions that they might want to ask?
I'll open up. Anybody want to be recognized to ask a question? No?
A couple of questions, Peter. One is I just want to absolutely understand the rate increase. Currently, in-district users, residential users, like most of us here in the room in the district, we pay $43.50 per quarter, which provides you with 6,000 gallons per month or 18,000 gallons per quarter. So, on the assumption that the water district is going to continue to bill quarterly, I'm not sure if that's the case or not, Travis, if that's the plan.
Yes,
Then you're saying that, when you're saying the so-called average user, are you talking about the user that doesn't exceed the 6,000 gallons per month, I guess is what I'm getting at, because obviously there's many property owners in Vergennes that are above the average, and then, you know, many people, senior citizens, one or two person households, you know, are paying $43.50 and per quarter and using far less than 6,000 gallons per month on average. So are you telling me that the $43.50 per quarter for the 18,000 gallons is going to go to $90 per quarter for that? So in essence, somebody like that's not going over the minimum, they expect to see their bill from $43.50 to $90.
The board's target is $368 for that base amount of water consumed. They're also in the process of reevaluating their rates. That the base may go up a little bit, the base may stay the same, but the target is to have a typical single-family home. However, whatever formula they work through to adjust the rates will be based on 368.
The other question I have, it deals with capacity. You mentioned about how the plant currently uses about 600,000 gallons a day, and obviously we, on our end, we live in a world of sewer where that flow really extremely fluctuates, whereas in the water district, I'm assuming there's not a heck of a lot of fluctuation. Obviously, there's a time of the year when people are watering their plants and watering their lawn, that maybe your usage might be up, driven by the weather, but my guess is that 600,000 gallons probably stays reasonably constant over a 365-day period. What is the capacity of the plant currently?
Right now, the average that I mentioned is spread out, water production spread out over the course of the year. They do see typically summertime peaks. On max day summer, they can close in on 1 million gallons per day. That's really putting the existing plant right to its capacity limits. Typically, these facilities are designed so that you can have one unit, one train of the process completely offline and meet your maximum day demand. Right now, they can meet their maximum day demand, but it's with everything going full bore. So the plant right now is about 1 million gallons per day capacity. I've got those numbers, but I just don't remember them right off the top of my head. We're going to be, one, building that redundancy in the facility so that one train of the process can be offline, so that allows them to service things and keep the equipment up. And two, we're designing it so that the balance of the system can account for 40 years of growth, projected population growth in the distribution area. Now, we used a combination of sources for population projections. We looked at Addison County Regional Planning Commission, Vermont Rural Studies offices, and the U.S. Census data, and we used about 17 to 18% population growth over the next 35 to 40 years. So we factored that into the base capacity of the facility as well.
What's that? Ziggy?
It has been mentioned in the past about metering water, like Mel was talking about. You have a single person or 2 people in the house, or you have a family, and again, we're paying. Some of those are paying more with less people. So it has been discussed about metering the water. Was in this formula, was anything you ever mentioned about that?
Well, the majority of the customers in the district right now, I think it's the large majority of the customers in the district do have meters, and the billing is based on those meter.
I'm saying if you only use 3,000 instead of 6,000.
Mm-hmm.
This is what I'm talking about. That they would have to pay less than somebody would, not using the max.
Mm-hmm.
You understand what I'm saying?
One of the things we're in discussion right now with the rate increase to try to ease the pain of the rate increase that we're talking. One of the things that we've mentioned several times at board meetings is, are we going to stay with the 18,000 gallons? Are we gonna increase it? Are we gonna go to a different style of billing where we're billing by the gallon? But that's something that we're working on as we speak, basically, because we realize that there's folks in the district that have a hard time meeting the 4350, let alone the 90. So we're working on that to try to find a way that's gonna make everybody pay for what they use and also be fair to the whole district.
A couple of other points too. The district does have a discount rate for senior citizens that use less than I forget the total gallonage for your senior discount.
I think it's 14,000. I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so there's a certain gallonage where if a senior citizen uses less than that, they actually get a discounted rate. The other thing to take into consideration, and the Vergennes Patton district does this, and quite a few water systems do this, is they set that base rate because they have base expenses regardless of how much water they produce. So that's why typically most water systems do set a base rate. You've got to pay this fee regardless of how much water you use, because they've got a debt service, they've got certain overhead costs that really aren't a function of what it costs to produce reduce the water.
Mr.
I have
Bill?
a question as a
Certainly,
citizen, I
join in.
guess. If this plant's 37 years old, and you're looking at over 100% increase in fees, why weren't rates raised 10 years ago incrementally to create a reserve fund so this increase wouldn't be so dramatic this year?
I mean,
That's,
you feel that
that's a
way.
question we've been asked a lot, and the only thing I can say, Bill, is, you know, I've been on the board for 4 years now, and I think currently the longest standing board member's been on for about 6 years. We've been working on this project for approximately 3 years, 2 years approximately, Peter. And so for the majority of the time that this current board has been on there, this is something we've been working on.
I'm not blaming you.
No, I'm
wondering why.
Yeah, I understand. And you know, and that's one thing that we certainly wish had taken place as
Okay.
well, you know, because initially when the plant first opened, if my memory serves me correct, we were paying about $8 a month for water, and currently we're paying about $14 a month for water. So we're talking 37 years of, you know, nothing is $6 more a month than what it was 37 years ago. And so certainly we, as a board, wish that things have been done in the past to help ease the pain of this whole process as well.
Okay. Any other question from the council? No? Oh, well then, gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate
Thank
you
you.
coming and doing your presentation,
Okay.
and good luck with your vote.
Thank you very much. Just one last thing, there will be an informational meeting on July 28th. It'll be at 7 p.m. at the Patton Town offices. And immediately before it at 5:30, there will be an open house at the plant for people to come in and take a tour.
Wear a raincoat?
Depends on how humid it is that day.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thanks, Peter. Okay. Now we're going to go to Mr. Bill, but first, before he has a chance to start, I have one comment to make to the council. Because this has to do with the possibility of dealing with property, we are not allowed to discuss it in an open meeting. We can hear what he has to offer, and if we choose to go into an executive session to discuss any disposition of the property, we would have to do it in executive session, and Bill could be invited if necessary. So, having said that, Bill, turn the floor over to you.
I'm here on behalf of the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Vergennes. I've been on the board for 3.5 years, give or take. And I guess my title is vice chairman, but we had just celebrated our 10th anniversary in Vergennes as a Boys and Girls Club, and it has grown substantially, and I think it's been a very successful organization. We've had in the last 8 years, the Boys and Girls Club does a Youth of the Year celebration, and in 4 of the last 8 years, the Vergennes youth has won the state title. And then they go on to the regional and so on. So I think there's some great things going on. Some of you may know about it, some of you may not, but if you don't, you should stop by and just say hi and meet some folks there. What I'm here to talk about is you know, we've been here 10 years. I think we've got a pretty good financial footing. We've got a good board. We've got great employees. And I think our success is at the point now where we're looking at trying to go to another level. We've been renting 2 spaces, one from Ziggy in her building for the teen center, the Oddfellows Hall for the youth center, for a number of years now. When there was the first talk of the elderly housing project out by the Legion, we were initially involved in that, hoping we might be able to get a piece of that land and part of that development to move a Boys and Girls Club facility out there. It's my understanding that due to wetlands and the capacity of the land, that they had to kind of reduce the footprint of some of that. There's still a possibility for the elderly center. I guess parent-child center is potentially talking out there, but we're off the table at this point. We did a study about 10 years ago, the Vergennes Partnership did, with the Vermont Community Foundation, looking at a community center facility. And the Boys and Girls Club was involved in that. And in actuality, The Vergennes partnership was granted a $50,000 grant to put towards a community center. That was to include elderly, Boys and Girls Club, and younger children. That grant is still on the table. It's held by the Community Foundation. I've talked to them about it, and so it's still there. What we are here to talk about or present to you, and this is an initial, just to toss it on the table, is that I do know that the city did recently take title to the 8 acres of land was the district owned, the school district owned, between the high school and the elementary school. It has access off New Haven Road, and we are here to say we might be interested in trying to purchase that property from the city of Vergennes. So we could eventually build a facility there. We've talked to some of our board members and supporters. We have some verbal commitments for some donations to perhaps procure the building, or the land, and then look at funding for the building. The SURF money might become available if we get some other partners, but we can't do anything until we at least have I guess maybe an option of some sort, where we say we'd like to pursue this. Can we agree on how to arrive at a price? If that's acceptable, we need to get certain costs. If those costs are acceptable in terms of buying the land and the site improvements, then we could proceed with building estimates and so on and so forth, but it's kind of got to go in lockstep. So we're interested in talking to the city about procuring it. It might give you some cash to use for pool maintenance, recreation, whatever. But that's what I'd like to throw out there and see what the council thinks. And it's not going to happen overnight, I realize that, but this is just the first entree.
We can't get into any sort of a discussion with you, Bill. So I'm kind of wondering, does the board wish to go into executive session at some point this evening and discuss this?
Yes.
Would you want to do it like now or later?
My understanding would be that we have the option to go into executive session. We don't specifically have to, relative to real estate, if we're not discussing specific terms.
Well,
Yeah, you're not required to go into an executive session. Obviously there isn't any offer on the table here for the council to deliberate on, other than to say that the Boys and Girls Club is interested in receiving an option on the property. I think that to put at least one card on the table, I think the city council should at least take some kind of position that they would entertain an option, entertain the concept of an option agreement on the property. Because if a majority of the city council is not interested in considering an option with the Boys and Girls Club, that's something, because it may very well be the case that the majority of this board prefers to keep the property for city purposes down the road, all right? That kind of discussion, Mike, is something that needs to be held in public session for this board to decide that. Relative to the terms, once you get to that point, to a decision that the board is willing to consider and negotiate an option, then of course those discussions would be held in executive session. So I think the first step really is whether or not the city council is interested in considering an option of the property with the Boys and Girls Club.
I must have misunderstood our conversation that we had on the phone then, because I thought you indicated that we needed to, but.
All that I wanted to make sure of, Mike, and you accomplished the goal, is to make sure that the discussion was not, that there was not any discussion about any terms, any price, any discussion about how much of the land, whether or not it's all or a portion. I don't think any of that kind of discussion should be held in open session. But I think, as I mentioned before, I think that the first step about whether or not the council is open to those discussions, I think that's, you know, should be
Okay.
heard by the public.
I guess I'd ask for a motion to entertain the idea of possibly selling the property to the Boys and Girls Club. At least that way they'll get an idea of where the council stands.
Can I ask
Chris?
a question first?
You-
Before,
we- Well, yep, fine.
I want to know the answer before I vote on this
Okay.
entertaining here. Currently, as that piece of property sits, we are the proud owners of that.
Yes, we are.
And who pays taxes on that piece?
Nobody. And
Well-
it wasn't paid when the school paid it. When the school owned it, schools are tax exempt, and obviously we don't pay taxes to ourselves. So it's,
And actually, Boys and Girls Clubs are tax exempt by statute as well.
That was my question.
Okay.
Sorry, I wasn't answering that question.
Been there for a while.
they wondered about whether or not the city has.
I heard I understood the question, but I couldn't hear what you said.
I said that it's been tax exempt.
Okay.
While at the term that's been owned by the graded school, it's been tax exempt.
Okay, that's what I thought. I
Yeah.
just couldn't quite hear. Sorry.
So can I have a motion
I will make that motion.
that we entertain the proposed sale of the property to, we'll get into details later on. Chris, I think she got it out before Randy did. All right, any other discussion that we can have? I know that there is another party that has interested in some activities in that area, but that again would be the discussion of a possible agreement if the property was sell, some right-of-ways or some things that could be talked
So what
about.
can we discuss now, because you just put limitations on a couple of questions I wanna ask.
We can discuss the overall concept of either the conveyance of an option or the eventual conveyance of the property, and what the implications of that would be both to the city of Vergennes and to the Boys and Girls Club. But my inclination would be not to discuss price, terms, or anything else of a financial nature, and we're okay.
Direct your question.
Yeah, I think it's fine.
We'll tell you if we can, before anybody responds.
Yeah, exactly.
My sense is, and Melanie did talk about this a little bit, is that, you know, we would like to agree to some terms in this option, whereas we agreed to determine a set of value. Once that is set, then we can take the next step and look at improvement costs from our point of view, it's something we would incur and so on. And if that was was favorable, then we would then, you know, enter into a formal agreement. And then, you know, beyond that, at some point, the property transfer. And it's not necessarily the whole piece of land either. I understand a lot of it. Its topography is iffy. It may only be a portion of it. We have yet to determine that. That'd be another thing to discuss.
Ziggy was first, then we'll go to Randy.
So I'm gonna say something now.
Sure, go ahead, we'll say no.
I know I'm in a position because I got the Boys and Girls Club in my building, okay, so I feel kind of awkward on this. Because, but I do know there's other land available in Vergennes. I feel, and I've expressed this before, is that if we got any land at all, in the way, the situation that all these new updates are going on, that maybe we may need the land down the road. Vergennes themselves may need the road. Now, not necessarily, maybe, like we say, we should have maps drawn up to see what the lay of the land is, and maybe we don't need to sell 8.5 acres. Maybe we could sell 1.5 acres or something like that. I'm just saying that Vergennes need, every piece of land that Vergennes gets right now, I think we should hold on to. Not sell the whole 8.5 acres and see what we got out there, because
And Bill has, I believe, indicated that,
that's what my
And that's-
concern is. But
okay.
there's also, doesn't Carl Cole have some land out here for sale?
Not that I know of, but he may. I don't know.
Yeah, I think he did
But
at one
I
time.
think also, given, we are not a rich organization.
Yeah, I know,
and,
but I
you know,
just-
given the circumstances of this, we were hoping that there might be a win-win situation for everybody. If someone wants $150,000 for a parcel of land, it's totally off the table as far as we're concerned, because we can't afford that.
did you have any more questions? I'm gonna
That's
go
my
Randy?
concern with the land with Vergennes.
Randy?
Yeah, The access would be beyond Jerome's house and between that little shoebox house.
50-foot right of, well, that's a 50-foot owned strip of land, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
I believe.
40 or 48 feet or
And that-
something,
yeah,
but
that's
it's a
the
strip of
only,
land.
unless there was a way to do access via the schools.
What's
Down
that?
your driveway. There you go,
Another driveway.
your driveway.
Oh, yes. Goes right off. Next, I'm not really opposed to selling a piece. I guess I'll just put it in a chunk. But I'm not, the whole eight and a half acres, like Zig said, that there would be somewhere along the line they could mandate.
There has been some discussion, and there is a small committee working on some of the low-lying land. They want to put in some nature trails and put in a bridge down by where the beaver dam used to be, and make a walking path and nature trails for bird watching, et cetera. And hopefully someday that it'll stretch up through towards the Eagles Club and go out to Route 7 to make a walking path like some of the other cities have. So that's some of the discussion. David?
I can see where you're coming from in terms of it's pretty clear to me that you're at or near capacity with regard to the current locations. And I know a little bit about the club dating back to the time when Sam Allo first got things off the ground and kind of looked for a permanent home for quite a while. And I was thinking about it the other day and very, very impressed in terms of the commitment of both the volunteers and the employees. And I think it's certainly an asset to the city of Vergennes. I think that one of the things that we want to consider is that things are one way today, and very often they may be a different way tomorrow, or 30 years from tomorrow. What I would like to see, me personally, I'd like to see an opportunity for the club to have a facility. I think that it makes sense for it to be in that location. It's near to the schools, obviously. It doesn't present any logistical issues relative to the kids walking back and forth, which I think is a good thing. That way they don't have to be ferried around in cars, they don't get hit crossing the road, so on and so forth. The concern that I have is this, and I think that there's a number of ways to get from point A to point B on this. I would not be in favor of an outright sale of the property, because I think that it's important for some of the reasons that Ziggy mentioned for the city to maintain a level of control. There's very little that we still own that's developable property within the city, and that being one of them. That's one of the issues, and the other issue is that in thinking about how to maintain some level of control over what would occur on either the whole parcel or a portion of the parcel, it would be a pretty complex deed with regard to covenants and restrictions. And I think that there's another way to get to where everyone might like to be on that, and that's with a long-term land lease. And that creates a situation where it's probably financially advantageous for the club. The city gets to maintain a level of control over the facility, and you never know what kind of crazy things can occur. Say 30 years from now the club builds a facility, they become financially insolvent, and some creditor ends up owning the facility. And these are kind of crazy things, but I've been alive long enough to see a lot of them occur. And so a long-term land lease would give us the level of control over that facility, and it would potentially make it more feasible for the club.
That definitely
I
is.
think that has distinct possibilities. There are two concerns, not concerns, I think they can be worked out probably. One is, it's similar to the Opera House. To get people to donate to a building that their organization is not going to own may make them hesitate in terms of, writing a big check for a building that might cost $300,000 or something, knowing that the city of Vergennes ultimately could own it. Nothing against the city of Vergennes, but if the club goes defunct, then the city should own it, that's fine. If we can work out an arrangement like the Opera House, where there is a long-term lease, where there are separate entities, control issues are well-defined and so on, that might be fine. The only other issue would be financing. We would probably have to get some kind of a note as a nonprofit, and we were looking at potentially we have donations for the land, we would have equity. We may get donations just for the building, but I'm not sure how that would play out. We haven't gone to the financing aspect yet. But those are my two concerns. But I think that it's worth pursuing. It can be on the table.
If we vote in favor of moving forward on this, I think it would be viable to put together a committee, yourself included, to hammer out some of that at a table, so then we aren't playing the back and forth thing 100 times.
That's a great idea. I mean, I'd be more than happy we can get a couple of our board members, a couple of council members, maybe even a couple of, outsiders with, that may be able to offer some expertise. That's
Sure.
great.
Sound like we're headed in the right direction? Then I'd like to put this to the vote.
What was the specific motion again?
Motion to consider an option on the sale of the property to the Boys and Girls Club.
We're considering an option. When the,
Can we drop the word sale for now, or?
we can,
Or can we add lease/or lease?
I would
What are you
prefer
looking
it to
for?
be, I would prefer it to be less specific.
Yes.
I would prefer it, I'm not sure how it would be worded if you give me
Open
a
discussion,
discussion regarding
the land.
okay.
The utilization.
What do you mean, getting rid of the
There we
Boys and
go,
Girls Club?
absolutely.
No,
Why
getting rid
don't
of
we
the
make this
sale.
simple? Why don't we make this simple? Why don't we have
I withdraw.
withdraw? David, make the motion.
Motion to consider the utilization of all or part of the 8.13 acre parcel by the Vergennes Boys and Girls Club.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Randy. Okay, now any other further discussions on David's and Randy's motion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried.
We have a board meeting next week. I'll bring this to them, and then let's talk about a committee and set some dates, and we can see where it goes.
Definitely want, okay.
Great. Thanks.
Interested parties see me after that want to participate on this committee. Okay? Thank you, Bill.
Yep, thank you.
Stay
Talk
warm.
to you soon.
Hey. Stay cool. They say this front's gonna stay in here until late November, so not this hot though. Okay, we've passed around warrants.
Yeah, Mike, just one thing on
Yes.
the warrants, obviously, there was 2 sets of warrants here. I'm hoping that everybody signed each set, because obviously one gets filed away in last fiscal year, and one is the start of this year. We actually celebrate June 30, about 2/3 of the way into July, to cut down on the amount of accruals. So like power bills, telephone bills, that come in after July 1. That's why we keep those separated. One of the things, just Joan, if you wouldn't mind mentioning this in the warrants, there was an S2 bill in there. Obviously, they're the firm that is providing the architectural services for the train station, and the state picked up on the fact that there was $23.68 worth of sales tax. I found it a little ironic that how V-Trans claim that to be an ineligible expense, when in reality the money just goes back to Montpelier at the end of the day. But anyway, we're going to need to reissue that check tomorrow, being $23.68 less than what it shows right there in that warrant. So that check's going to have to be voided, or it messes up our 100% reimbursement with V-Trans. It's not a last year's check, Joan. It's a this year's check.
Okay. All right, any other questions about the warrants? We'll get into the budget in just a minute. I'd ask for a motion on the Vergennes City Council meeting for July 29th, 2010. June 29th. Lowell made the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any omission, errors, corrections that anybody has? Hearing none, all those in favor of those minutes?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. Okay, any budget
Yeah,
issues?
I wanted to just do a quick handout on the budget report, and when I'm talking about budget report, I'm actually still talking about last year's budget report, and we included in your packets a budget report as of June 30 that included most but not quite all of the bills that we paid in June and in July that were for June expenses. And what this sheet is I think this is something that I showed you last time, and I'm showing it to you again because we are getting very, very near finalizing our year-end position. And you'll notice how I've got two yellow boxes there. And what those boxes represent is predominantly revenues. We believe that all of the bills have been paid, and bills in July covering June expenses have been reflected, so we think that the expenses are spot on. Relative to the revenue side, in the budget report, about 2/3 of the way down, there's a line item that says leader program of $2,275 and some towing expense. That, Joan and I will get that we need to get that account number changed so it belongs in a different spot, because typically line items that show up in that grants and non-budget are typically revenues that are intended to be spent, i.e. you get a grant of $5,000 and it's in essence off budget and you spend $5,000, and so it's a wash from the budget standpoint. But the leader program, which is really a wellness program that Melissa Wright does 98% of the work on, the city gets this check from the League of Cities and Towns Health Trust to in essence award the city for the efforts of both Melissa and the employees. We don't spend that money, and so therefore that really ends up being some additional revenue. You know, some communities take that money and use it to offset medical insurance. We just don't bother making 43 journal entries to allocate that $2,275. So that number is a part of the $11,000. The towing fees is part of the $11,000. And there was $7,200 worth of police fines that came in on around the 7th or 9th of July for tickets that were paid in June. And so you add those numbers up, and there's this additional $11,000. There is one other item I'll just mention to you, that the police does receive a number of highway grants, click it or ticket, DUI grants, and which involves where police officers go out and do grant duty is what we call it. They get paid off budget, and those grants cover not only the wages, whether or not they're at straight time or overtime, but it also covers the employer side of Social Security, the employer retirement cost, and the employer workers' compensation. And when you look at the budget, you'll notice where we have already taken in about $6,800 and we've spent about $6,800. There actually is another check, two checks actually, Joan, that are headed her way to the tune of around $1,300, which basically represents that overhead. And the easy way for that is just to dump it in on the revenue side, but unfortunately our auditors make us actually do journal entries and pull the related expenses out of the police. So what will end up happening is that the retirement, Social Security, and workers' compensation totals that you see in that June 30 report for the police department will actually be reduced by that $1,300. So it obviously will end up increasing our fund balance. So back when we had, when the board adopted the rate, I mentioned to you that we were looking at a fund balance carryover of around $180,000. I still feel that that's where we're at. Obviously, this is subject to audit. You know, the auditors are going to be coming here the first week in September. I'm confident that there's no surprises in our books, and so that $180,000, I'm going to say, is there and will be, in essence, confirmed by our auditors. So that's all I had on last year's budget report, Mike. We actually have done a budget report reflecting the bills that are in front of you, but really it's not a heck of a lot of information for you with just one set of bills. So we'll get back into the routine at your next meetings of providing you with a budget report that includes warrants that are in front of you for that evening.
Anybody have any specific questions for Mel? If not, we'll move on to the committee reports. Anybody have anything to report? David?
I do. The skateboard park, in the mornings, Monday through Friday, from 8:30 to 12 or 12:30, there have been skateboard lessons, skateboard clinic. A young man named Dustin Titilio is running that, and it's gone very, very well. I've been very impressed. The attendance has been good. The kids are there, rain or shine. We can't open the park for safety reasons when the surfaces are wet. It was raining pretty hard yesterday morning. They were there anyway, ready to go, but unfortunately can't have the park in use when the weather is inclement weather. All the kids are either showing up with helmets, or there are helmets provided to the ones that do not have them. Additionally, the park is open most afternoons, typically a little bit after 3:30 or so. It's still kind of hit and miss because the people that are staffing it are volunteers. They're both mothers with young families, and time to time things come up. So it's not working 100%, but it's far beyond where it was last year. The compliance is good relative to the rules. There really haven't been any other real issues of note, other than at some point we're going to address the issues relative to some of the other locks on the warming hut facility itself, and getting some additional lighting down there. But it's gone pretty well. There haven't been any incidents of note at all.
If you can give me something in writing that we'll
Put in there?
put on the website,
Okay.
a tentative schedule,
Sure.
whatever, play it up, do it up any way you want, and we found out a way to do cut and paste,
Okay.
that people can just click on.
Okay. I'll get you that this week.
Yep, please. Anything else?
That's it.
Okay. Chris, anything on the farmer's market? I see, I've been up a bunch of different times. It looks like it's starting to draw a crowd.
Yes, it is, and there's vegetables there now.
And there's, starting to see more of a variety. And I've noticed some of the prices have more competitive and seem to be dropping a little bit. So at first, they were a little bit high, I felt. That's
Variety up there.
That's good. Excellent. Mr. Joe, anything to report on?
Nothing to report right now.
Okay. Zig? Quiet on the front?
Seems to be.
Okay. Randy?
The only thing, we've got an upcoming meeting for the Haunted Forest tomorrow night.
Yep, we do. Tomorrow night, and that's one of my announcements. I'll touch on it a little bit. Okay. We have nobody for public comment tonight. Let's go right to number 6A. Melvin.
Want me to take it, or you want to take it?
Or
Yesterday,
David?
we actually, at the city council's request, we did conduct interviews with 2 people. The first interview was for the single vacancy that we have on the Development Review Board. David was there, I was there, and Jason Farrell, who is the chair of the DRB. Alexandra McGuire, who's the chair of the Planning Commission. She actually came a little early, and we allowed her to sit in on the DRB interview as well. So the committee interviewed a resident by the name of Steve Rappaport, and the committee was unanimous in recommending that he be appointed to the board. The committee doesn't get involved with terms. Mike, and I didn't check my sheet, but we would recommend, I think it would be best that he be recommended to a term of August 1, 2011.
Okay, he'd be a one-year term.
Yep.
Okay. I didn't bring my sheets either. Just to let the council know, I have been in contact one way or the other through Mel in one case, to all those people that were due for reappointment, and all of them indicated that they would be willing to serve. One has a concern about an issue, family growing and him being there for his family. And I indicated to him, give us what you can, and if you need to step down, you can step, that's, the family is first. It's always that way. So, and they said, based on that, we'll try it for 6 months, see how it goes, and if I can give longer, I'll go longer, so.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think of the names, Mike. I should have brought my sheet, because really the city council needs to not only take
Yep.
action on Steve Rappaport, but also those other members that you spoke
Who
to.
met last
I know
night,
that
DRB?
the planning commission met last night. So DRB, I know that Jim Boscheman was one of the persons that you spoke to.
Yep. And he was, so his has to be for a 2-year term.
Yeah,
How about if I make a motion that we approve Steve and the current members whose terms are up?
there you go.
All right,
That's an easy way.
For 2-year terms.
right. Wait, no, Steve
Steve
is
is
a
1 year
one-year.
term, and the others are all twos.
We have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
David seconded it, open for any discussion?
Does
Hearing-
this mean I get off now?
Yes, yes it does, Zig. Matter of fact.
Except for emergencies, of course. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Go right to number B, appointment of the planning commission.
Yeah, planning commission, there's 2 vacancies. Only one person has come forward with interest, and the committee interviewed her last night as well. Her name is Morgan Kittredge. She and her husband own a home in Thomas Circle. She's lived here in Vergennes a little more than a year. She's a paralegal. She brings a skill set to the table. She works in real estate. One of the things that we talk about during the interview process, I'll say that I talk about with the folks is relative to commitment and any potential conflict of interest. And both Steve Rappaport and Morgan absolutely understand the commitment and the importance to attend meetings. And in the case of Morgan, even though she is a paralegal for a firm that works out of both Essex and South Burlington, the firm does very little work in the Vergennes area. So she does not see that as being any conflict. And so the committee was unanimous in recommending her to becoming a member of the planning commission.
Chris, you want to make that same motion?
I will make that motion. Do we have anybody planning commission's terms up?
Yes.
Yeah.
I will make the motion that we approve Morgan for a 2-year term? 3-year term?
They're all twos.
They're all
Twos,
twos,
okay.
but I think we had to make it for a 1 year.
Okay, you
Because I
got it.
think, well, wait a minute, Mark?
Is she filling somebody?
Mark?
Yeah, I'm not sure without looking. I think it's best, one of the things is, I think that typically what we do for new members is appoint them to 1-year term to make sure that they understand what they're getting involved with and make sure that there really isn't any conflicts with their commitment. And so, I mean, typically we do it that way, and then obviously when their term comes up, They might end up with an additional one to keep them in sync, because what we always want to do is have approximately half of the board subject to renewal on August 1.
No, it's Stacy, Cecile.
I know Stacy and Cecile for sure.
Now, we don't have to fill the other vacancy, right? Or do
Well,
we?
you don't have to, but we do typically operate with a 7-member board. With Morgan coming on, that gives us a 6-member board, and therefore you end up with having you have to have 4 members to meet a quorum. And so it
Okay.
is best that
Okay.
we continue to
Try to
search
do
for
another one.
an additional member.
Okay,
I make the motion that we approve Morgan's appointment for 1 year, and those that terms are expired to renew them for another 2 years.
Second?
take a choice. They're
Lowell.
both at the same time. David says Lowell.
I said Dave.
Open for discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? So carried. Mel?
Yeah, interest allocation formula, there's 2 documents that are handed out to you. I want to deal with the memo that Joan wrote first. I don't really feel that the council has to take any action relative to Joan's memo because it is consistent with the policy that you adopted back a year or so ago, but the minutes should reflect, Joan, that the earnings, which were at 6.01%, obviously below this 8% threshold, because if the earnings are greater than 8%, then anything above 8% automatically stays in the fund, all right? If the earnings are less than 8%, then 75% is allocated to the Recreation Facilities Reserve Fund, and that balance, the other 25% stays in the fund. So based on the earnings of the fund this year of $22,841.33, there'll be $17,131 that will transfer into the Recreation Facilities Maintenance Reserve Fund. Of course, $6,000 will be coming out of there this year and be transferred over into the pool account, leaving $12,131 for ongoing maintenance of our facilities, and the $5,710.33 will stay in the fund, giving the so-called new starting point. Basically, the money really doesn't come out of there immediately, but we have to go back and calculate what our starting point. So basically what's happened in this fund, it started out with $300,000, and after, since 1994, 1995, that reserve fund has grown by $85,000, and therefore that increases its growth. The city council does have the authority to use any portion of that $85,593, but it's been the policy that's been adopted is to have that fund grow so the earnings can grow. So there isn't any action on that one. The other one, there is action. This is something that Joan and I don't want to say we're begging for you to approve this, but we really would appreciate you approving this to make our lives a lot easier and to save on money in our auditors. Our current allocation is whereby every fund, regardless of its size, receives an interest allocation. And I'm talking about a Lister's Education Fund with $922 earning $2.31 worth of interest, and we have to have that account audited and having journal entries to go through. So there really is, too much make work going on here. And so what we recommend is for last fiscal year, we did earn, Joan, the number's here. What we earned on a combination of our checking account and our combined account for all of the funds other than the Watershed and the Ray Davison and the Green Mountain Power Co-op, it made the sum of those numbers, the sum of $98.25 plus the $500 and the $4,000. The $500 and the $4,000, the reason why I've recommended that is because that is what we budgeted for FY 2010, all right? And so what my recommendation is that we allocate that $500 for fire and $4,000 for sewer to make those line items whole. The balance of $9,825.25 just goes to the general fund. One of the things that this does, and going forward, there is no budgeted interest earnings for fire and sewer. One of the things that this does is that there's obviously administrative cost associated with running these 30 funds. And for instance, we don't charge an administrative fee for the fire department. We don't charge an administrative fee for running the biosolids fund, or we don't charge a fee for running the swimming pool fund. We don't charge a fee for running the recycling fund. So one of the things that by pushing all of the interest, other than those reserve funds, to the general fund, basically is a small way, if you will, of paying the city for administering all of these funds. Now, what that obviously means is that as money gets put into a fire truck replacement fund, it's not going to grow by interest. It's just going to get its allocation. Any money that goes into the computerization records fund, it's just going to get its allocation. It's not, there's no interest earnings, however small or large, that would occur on this. So all that we would do under this plan is at the end of the year, we total up the earnings, put it in the general fund, we're done. There's no additional mathematical calculations, which, to be honest with you, weren't correct to begin with, because the way that the interest was allocated over the past few years, there was a time 15 years ago that our accounting system lent it so that we could actually calculate how much interest we earn in a month and do an average daily balance for each account, and you could allocate interest. We don't work, that was on a cash basis of accounting. We don't work in that world any longer. We work in an accrual basis of accounting. And so therefore, from a fund balance standpoint, you could have a fund that has a fund balance of $100,000 because it has a grants receivable of $100,000. The fact of the matter is it has no money. But the way the interest was allocated in the past, if it had a $100,000 fund balance, even though it had a grants receivable of $100,000, it was allocated interest as if it had $100,000 in cash. And so interest allocation really just doesn't work in a fund, what's called fund accounting. It really only works in cash. 20 years ago, that's what Joan and I worked in. Every fund had only the cash that it had. It didn't count any receivables. So this actually, to me, ends up being fairer. It's we did. I think I shared an email with you with our auditors to say that this is absolutely fine because all of the money is held by the general fund. But it is a different policy going forward.
So,
I have a question, please, ma'am.
just go ahead.
You have in the current budget for the sewer 47, so how did you decide on the 4?
Current budget or last year's budget?
Well, I'm
The
looking
June
at
30th.
the June 30th. For sewer interest.
Yep. If it's 47, it should have been 47.
Yeah.
Let me find it. Fund 4?
Well, I'm looking
I got it. I'd recommend that the sewer fund be $4,700 and the general fund be $9,125.25. Good catch.
Buddy.
I just find that to be a typo on Mel's part, okay?
It was a number that must have been in my head. But that is correct, Christine. I'm not looking to short either the fire or the sewer.
Oh, so that 8 becomes a 1.
That's correct. Good catch.
Okay. So, it's Mel's and Jones' recommendation that they propose 2010, that the earning interest is distributed as following: general fund, $9,125.25, fire fund, $500, sewer fund, $4,700.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
We have a motion and seconded. Open it for further discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried.
And the second one, Mike, unless, I mean, that could have been in the same motion, but the second one is for 2011 and going forward, whereby all of the interest goes to the general fund.
Can we have a motion?
Second.
Ziggy made the motion, David seconded it. She's shaking her head no.
So you're saying that it's going into the,
From here out.
General, from now
General?
on.
Only.
Just general.
just general?
That's correct.
Okay.
Starting in 2011.
Okay.
Further discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Okay, Claude and Sandra Bourgeois, wastewater connection fee. I didn't have a chance to get with you. If there is an actual vote on this because of a circumstance with you have a property, I'd ask you to abstain. You can ask any questions you want to generate.
I have a property, what is that? I don't
The-
understand what you're saying.
Mel and I.
Your trailer lot, Zig, would actually be absolutely affected by this vote. I mean, this is really about properties that have, that pay a bonded debt.
Right, but I
Okay.
should have the right to defend that also.
You
Absolutely,
do,
yeah.
for
Yeah, I'm not-
discussion.
I'm not saying
but-
that.
But when it comes to the voting process,
I think I should have that right to vote also.
You can, this board does not have a conflict of interest policy, so, you know, if you elect to vote, that's your.
When I brought it up, I wasn't even thinking of be honest with you, I forgot all about the trailer. I was just thinking of some of those people up there in the past when they had discussed stuff. So.
well, the thing that you own property that is affected by this vote, and that's why we thought there could be a direct conflict of interest, and we just didn't want any loophole and somebody challenging it later on. So that's why I was gonna ask you to refrain from voting, but I'll leave that up to you. You can abstain if you want when we get done. I was gonna give you every opportunity to bring up any points that you wanted to make so that the boards could help. It could help the boards make some good decisions here tonight.
Yeah, one thing, Mike, I hate to be handed pieces of paper at a meeting, and this is the third piece of paper that I'm handed to you. It's the last one I'm gonna hand to you tonight, so first off, I wanna apologize. But I would like you to take the time to read this one-page memo as it relates to those properties that pay the bonded debt charge.
Okay, we're gonna take a brief break here and read the document. Just want to make sure, yes, sure.
These people that have not been connected to the sewer have been paying on the bond.
Well, they've been paying what we call a bonded debt charge, all right? And, you know, typically, that bonded debt charge is something that should have been calculated on an annual basis. And what I mean by that is, let's say that there was a time when the base rate for a homeowner was $100 a year. And there was a time, and that's when it was. Single-family dwelling paid $100 a year, and they paid it twice a year for $50. And let's say if you looked at the sewer department budget, and let's say that you had a budget of $100,000, and of that $100,000 budget, $30,000 of that budget was for principal and interest payments. And so therefore, 30% of the budget was bond, and therefore, if the rate was $100, for those properties that weren't hooked up and and if it was a part of our rate structure, that if you had a developed property and you weren't hooked up, you were still liable for the bonded debt. It was calculated after that $30, all right? Now, I will tell you that, you know, during the time that I worked for the city of Vergennes, it was not looked at every year, all right? Because what I can tell you what was happening is that the sewer budget would go up, but if you didn't have any new debt, your principal payment stayed the same and your interest went down. And so therefore, 1 year, in theory, 1 year it's a $100 bill, of which $30 is bonded debt. The next year, you might get a $100 bill and $29 is bonded debt, and so on and so forth. And I can just tell you that it just wasn't looked at very closely at all. And my guess is I can tell you this, that when the city, in 1976, the rate was $66 a year, and of that, $22 was bonded debt. Joan and I weren't working for the city in 1976. In 1978 and 79, when the city went through and upgraded the plant, and therefore incurred more debt, and the rate went to $100, there actually was a mathematical calculation done, and the bonded debt was set at $30. It stayed at $30 for X number of years, and I know at some point, while I was manager, we had such little debt on the plant, you know, it was way less than 30%, and so we recalculated it. Now, in one of Joan's books, there's a notation in there where the rate was $126 a year and the bonded debt was $12.60. I don't remember that. Her writing is nice and neat, just doesn't have a date next to it. I'm assuming that was probably something that the council set, and the bonded debt was $12.60. Right now, we're charging $9.60. Now, I will tell you, back a few years ago, with the new debt on the plant, the rates had to increase. They went to $300, they went to $350. And when you use the same methodology to calculate bonded debt, the bonded debt charge out of that $300 or $350 a year was $82.67. I wasn't working here, but Joan told me that when that calculation was done, the people sitting on the city council said, there's no way we can charge people $82.67 a year when they're not hooked up to the sewer system. And the city council voted to keep the rate, right, Joan, at $9.60, all right? So basically, what the $9.60 has been doing, it's just been keeping them in our system. We know that this particular property owner has a developed piece of property, and we send them a bill. It's called bonded debt. It doesn't even come close to paying the bonded debt. But again, the city council that was sitting at the time just really felt that it was immoral, if you will, to be charging $82 a year for service that they were getting nothing from. So that was the decision.
And my second question is, if Claude has that sewer connected, is the city involved, or is there a private entity doing that, and he's paying for the digging, the installation, the pipe and everything? And
We do nothing, that's
We do
correct.
nothing.
We do nothing.
So I make a motion, we don't charge him.
We have a motion that we don't charge.
It's just a shot, you sitting here.
Do I have a second on the motion?
I'll second it.
No second. Well, let's open it up for discussion.
I guess, few things. If somebody has a vacant lot and they tie into the system, it's $1,340. That's our fee system, all right? And if in the case of these folks here who have a developed lot, after having paid a small fee throughout these years of bonded debt, it doesn't come close to $1,340. So let's take John and Pat Emerson as an example. They bought the piece of property, and I think that whatever happened before 1994, I think is history. But they bought the piece of property in 1994, paid bonded debt charges of roughly $9.60 per year, we think. We don't know that. And they paid that for 13 years, and in 2007, paid a connection fee of $1,340, all right? It wasn't even discussed. It was just something that happened. The city council adopted a connection fee of $1,340, and that's what they charged. So I guess my question is how can you reconcile that with the bourgeois?
Very easily. I can't go
There you
ahead.
go, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, there's a little history back here, and when this happened, if somebody like me was sitting on the board, I think it would have been brought up. But at the time that when I hooked on when this all started, is that they ran the sewer line up from the trailer park. They ended up, for example, with me, they ended up hooking Eddie and Lucille,
Yeah.
the Tuckers, and then where Billy Brown is, they actually ran a sewer for that building lot.
Yep.
They stopped right at the driveway. They ran, and I got the letter someplace, because I made sure Mr. Teese, it was Ken Teese, and it was George Bebo that was running, that had Carol Connor's position. They stood there and they said, we don't have any more money. We're out of money. And we were gonna go up, and it was past B Avenues, there's that trailer, that double wide. That one, from there up, there was two people or two houses up there, and they weren't gonna be able to hook them on. They thought, he said, and I remember the words, because I was a little upset, because I wanted to get on city sewer. So my husband, being the way he was, he said, that's fine, but the minute I have problems, you better be hooking me on. But I made him put it in, I'm gonna find that letter. I made him put it in writing. And then he mentioned other names, and they said they had to stop because they couldn't offer them anymore. They couldn't offer the sewer. Nothing was mentioned way on top of the hill, I will say that. But this was just in the immediate area. There was at least 6 or 7 people. In '84, when I hooked on, my sewer went. My sewer went. I had to hook on. In fact, I ended up, there's a line that runs right across my property, right across that hooks on to any development across the road. That's that. I got 2 manholes right on my property now. So I think it was '84, whatever you said, that's how I hooked on, and that's what happened with me. I ended up got lines there, so that across the road, anybody wants to hook on, they're gonna run their sewer right through me, then across and back down through the park. But there was names mentioned, and just fairness to them, that's why, I was there. And so that's how I happened to get hooked on in '84, but that's what happened. And at the time, if I find that letter, but it was just mentioned for us, but he did have other people's names.
Do you know what you paid in '94 or '84 to?
I got a discount because
You
I let
she
them run the
didn't pay
line.
anything.
Yeah, I paid 300 and something, 400 something, but they let them run the line.
She didn't pay a fee, Mike. If she paid any money, she paid for a portion of the project. She may have paid a portion of her own service line.
Yeah.
She didn't pay a connection fee.
Fee? Okay.
Or if she paid a connection fee, she paid a connection fee of $5.
It wasn't that much.
One of the things is this memo makes reference to a period of time where we had a connection fee of $5. It makes reference to a period of time where we had a connection fee of $500, and then the city adopted this $1,340. During the period of time that the city had the $500 connection fee, there were no connections of developed property, okay? There was no Pat Emerson, there was no Ziggy Como, there was no person during that $500 period that had paid bonded debt, okay? It has only been during the $1,340 period that the city has dealt with this. And the only one that they have dealt with is Pat Emerson. That's the only one. And I think that it was the feeling of, I'll say Rennie Perry, he was the manager at the time, was the fact that the city had a connection fee ordinance of $1,340, and therefore Pat Emerson had to pay $1,340. All right, and that's as far as it was looked at. To me, not that $130 is a lot of money, because this discussion is not just about Pat Emerson. It's about John Wagner. It's about Ziggy. It's about people who have been paying that bonded debt for a number of years. And I feel that there should be some mathematical formula in the way of a credit. Now, to me, that should be a calculated amount. I mean, if the city decided that the appropriate connection fee is $1,340, if that was the decision, that's what it should be. I wasn't here when that decision was made. Relative to the fact that people like John Wagner, who has been paying bonded debt, in the case of Claude Bourgeois, they've been paying bonded debt since 1967. Now, that was their choice. It's tough for me to get into the debate, Zig, about what the city was doing. About whether or not the city was extending lines to property. I can tell you that I know that in 1978 and in 1979, when the city did the sewer upgrade project, it was about replacing lines. It was not about extending lines. However, there was some money that went into extending. I mean, if you're telling me if you're saying that the Tucker property was not on the sewer system?
No, Debo's, Tucker's, Brown's, they ran it right up through, came right up and stopped right at my driveway, right at the
So
driveway.
there were, if that's the case, then what was happening is that there was some properties in town that had environmental concerns whereby it was either grant eligible or just the right thing to do, that the city extended lines to cure environmental issues, okay? Relative to the Bourgeois, Claude Bourgeois, I don't know what his issues are, whether or not there is an environmental issue, but I can tell you is if a property has an environmental issue, it's really their problem. It's not the city's problem. We don't, just head off extending lines to pick up properties.
Go ahead.
I think we should charge them the $1,340 and then deduct all the years, give them a credit for all the bonded debt that they paid. And take that right off the top, and whatever the difference is, that's what it is. And do the same for anybody else who does that.
We do have a motion on the floor, but we are in the discussion stage, so if it ends up changing, we'll have to withdraw the motion, but, or vote it down. David?
I think that there has to be some reconciliation between, all these different things that have gone on. I mean, unfortunately, what we're dealing with is what's before us today and not what was there in 94 or 78 or 76 or, whatever. But I think that to kind of expand on what Randy said, I think that there is a mathematical calculation there, and I think that it's actually more of a credit than just the $9 and change, because you have to take into consideration, Chris is a banker, you can help me out. I mean, the present value concept of money.
Annuity.
Yeah, meaning that basically there's some calculation there that, $9, 20 years ago worth more than $9 today. And so I don't know how you reconcile that, but again, then, on the other side, you have to take and look at what the connection fees were at that time. So there's some number, and I think that I don't know what it is, but I think that there's some money that needs to change hands, and I think it's more than nothing, and it's less than merely taking the $13.40 and subtracting the $9 and change a year.
Randy?
Well, if we want to reconcile with John and Pat Emerson, is we could, do in kind with them to a point, give them a rebate, credit their account, saying that, establishing a policy now. I mean, I don't think, I like Claude and Sandra, but I don't think they should get a free ride. A get out of jail free card that you had the document saying that you were gonna be taken care of, doesn't mean it affects everybody.
No, I know it, but I'm just saying, I'm not saying do it free, but I'm not saying 1,300 something either.
No.
Just because of the situation,
But they did make a cognizant choice not to join on at that time.
What are you talking about?
Did they, or did they not, the sewer
Well,
didn't go that far?
Basically, I don't know what the decision was, but Claude built his house in 1968. In 1968, you could just put a leach line out there and a septic tank and you're good to go. I think it's back then, from whether or not you built a septic system with a septic tank or whether or not you tied into the system, it may very well have been at that time, it made more economic sense for him as opposed to extending a line 1,000 feet. I mean, he's a long ways away from the sewer main. I mean, remember that the city is not in the development business. And back then, the bourgeois family decided to sell off some of its properties, and they sold off those lots up there. The city didn't develop those lots. The bourgeois family developed those lots. And each one of them, the bourgeois lot, the Sheila Turpin lot, the Nuttall lot, those were created from the bourgeois farm. They created those lots and opted to develop those with on-site septic systems. That's what they did. Sure, they could have figured out, how far the city sewer main is and how much it was going to cost, and they may very well have done that and determined that the cheapest way to provide wastewater service at their lot is to have their own private system, and that's what they did. Now, for whatever reason, now they want to tie into the system, and it was their decision to build where they built.
That makes sense to me. Okay, that does, on some of it, but it's like the other ones were here. I mean, my house was 1852, so obviously it was here when the sewer was at the time going through, and some of those other houses. But one thing I want to ask you, this bond, did you say we had a choice if we wanted to pay it or not pay it?
Oh, no, you had to pay it.
Oh, okay, I was
Yeah.
gonna say, I had to pay it all the time, right?
I mentioned this a month or so ago, and I think one of the problems that we have is back when the tap-on fee was $5, it really didn't warrant any discussion. Nobody cared about $5 in 1976, and they certainly don't care about it today. When you start talking about $500, and you start talking about $1,340, and you start talking about people who have developed property, that didn't get contemplated. I don't think it even entered anybody's mind about what do we do with Ziggy Como's trailer? What do we do with John and Mary Wagner's, all right? Now, if the decision is, yep, they've been paying bonded debt since 1976, and it's $1,340. If that's the decision, that's clear, okay? That's clear. That's your decision, all right? And all I'm saying is it's not as though these people didn't pay anything. They paid something, and I feel that they're deserving some kind of calculated credit in each and every instance. And really in retrospect, when the city first started charging bonded debt on all of these, Again, when it was a $5 connection fee, it didn't matter. But when it was $500, it does matter. And then when it's $13.40, it really matters, okay? So, I mean, we have Claude's check only because we needed to process his connection. I don't want you to at all feel rushed to make a decision here. I really don't. It's not something that, you know, Claude's check is sitting there. It's gonna be good for 6 months. If you want us to take each and every one of these and try to figure out what their due credit is, which obviously every year that John, and if you have us do that and we establish it, and every year that John and Mary don't hook up to the system, or every year that Ziggy's trailer lot doesn't hook up to the system, that'd be something that Joan Devine gets the honor of keeping track of, okay? And that's what we do.
Let's cut to the chase. I just want to see a show of hands of those people that are in favor of showing some form of rebate based on the amount of money that they paid. Not saying how much the rebate's going to be, but how many are in favor of giving some form of rebate? Some sort of okay? Then that sends a message. Yes, we want to do it. What is fair and equitable? Somebody needs to come up with some recommendations.
Yeah, we go back to work on that one.
Okay?
Yeah.
So I would ask for a motion to table this until the August.
I'm gonna withdraw my motion, and I
Okay.
was gonna say table it and let Melvin present us some sort of
And
calculation.
you'll second that motion? So, yeah, they both withdrew. Chris made a motion to table it until the next meeting, at which time hopefully Mel can come up with some calculation.
Joan, this Joan's work.
Well, work with Joan to come up with a calculation. We have a motion and a second to put this on the next agenda and for the city clerk and city manager to make a recommendation of what a formal rebate would be. Like David said, a credit, and like David said, if there's some way to calculate that adjusted number, then, I mean, they pay $9, they pay $9, but.
Yeah, right.
that's, you guys work out something, all right?
Yep.
Any other further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Melvin,
I'm gonna
you're
burn
back at
through,
the table.
I'm gonna burn through a lot of reports here in rapid fire. First off, tax sales. I can't remember if I spoke to the board in very much detail at the last meeting, but I did advertise 4 properties for tax sale. 2 because of outstanding sewers that went back to 2006, and 2 properties that had delinquent taxes for all of 2008 and all of 2009. One of the properties filed bankruptcy about 4 days after I published the tax sale notice, and so obviously that property could not be tax sale because they're protected under the bankruptcy rules. Another property, actually both the husband and the wife have pending workers' compensation claims. I've been in contact with the lawyer who represents one of the parties in that workers' compensation claim, and there was a hearing today. And the lawyer has assigned, I'm going to say $1,400 to $1,500 of that claim to bring that tax bill current. And I accepted that offer and therefore withdrew that from the tax sale process. That left 2 properties in Thomas Circle, one of them that had delinquent taxes to the tune of around $9,150. Another piece of property that had delinquent sewers going back to 2006 to around $1,900. And it wasn't really the $1,900 that was bothering me, it was the fact that they hadn't paid any nickel towards sewer going back to 2006. So we had a tax sale. There was 4 bidders at the tax sale, and the first property that had the $91,000, I held an auction, and the high bidder was $75,000. So we received a check for $75,000. I need to prepare a report, which will pay the taxes. Joan will deposit all of the money, but the way that it works is the taxes will get paid. Any costs and fees will get paid. The balance stays in the city accounts. And the mortgage company and the owner of the property has 12 months to redeem the property. by paying the bid price of $75,000 plus 1% per month or fraction thereof. So obviously the bidders, it's really strange to me. There was a day where tax sales with mortgages never went to tax sale. What would typically happen is the bank would step in and pay the taxes the day before the tax sale and then commence foreclosure or at least negotiations with the property owner to get the matter taken care of because it is they are default in their mortgage. I think what's happened today is that banks don't come and pay, some banks, I know your bank would pay it, but some banks don't come and pay the mortgage. And what my guess is what they do is that they hope the owner finds another place to finance the property. And therefore, once they find another bank to loan money, giving them a new mortgage, the bank, the original mortgage holder, gets paid in full, and therefore didn't have to pay the taxes, didn't have to pay the cost of foreclosure, didn't have to pay the bid price plus the 1% per month. It's just a different strategy that I'm not used of, but it's got to be.
It'll never happen.
I was gonna say,
What's that?
if you, another bank took on that, bank.
Oh, I don't think so either, but I'm just saying that they're just delaying delaying the inevitable, okay? So that's that property. The other property, similar location in Thomas Circle, the high bidder was actually the same gentleman, bid $55,000 on the other property. So on Friday, we collected $130,000 to pay off about $11,000 in taxes. We have all of the rest of the money sitting in our general fund gaining interest. Obviously the bidder is fully protected by their bid. They're going to get paid the equivalent of a 12% CD. My guess is at some point the bank will step forward and pay that bid price and pay the interest, and everybody will be made whole. Or if the bank's sleeping, this gentleman bought about $300,000 worth of property in Vergennes for $130,000. So he may have done okay. So that's that one. Train station project, I just want to let you know that there still remains two things that the VTrans project manager has to do. I've been emailing him today, and Steve Shanker from S2 goes on vacation for a couple of weeks, and it certainly is our desire that this go out to bid on August 4th. To me, if this project does not go out to bid on August 4th, I think we've lost the season. So that's our expectation, but it certainly is a slow project, and it's worse than like pushing rope. The other project, the Riverwalk project, I received today the final comments from a different VTrans project manager, if you will, overseeing that enhancement grant. So that should be going out to bid this week. Whether or not, I think that we have enough time to do it this year, but that's another project that's been delayed. The next project I haven't talked to the board about in quite some time deals with the Patton Road intersection study. That was a grant that we got from the TAC, the Transportation Advisory Committee that Greg Edwards sits on. Had a meeting today. Greg Edwards actually made it. Roger Dickinson, who is our traffic engineer. Rick Keene, who you met at the a couple of meetings ago, from works for regional planning. He's a transportation planner. And Susan Clark, not our Susan Clark, but Susan Clark that works for VTrans. And what we would like to do, Mike, I haven't had an opportunity to talk to you about this, but we would like to have I'll call it a community meeting on this intersection about what the engineers have come up with to improve the level of service at the Patton Road intersection. And we'd like to do that on September 12th. And that would be a meeting that we would certainly like the city council to attend, along with planning commission members, along with the neighborhood representatives from BF Goodrich, Patton Select Board people, and then possibly just have one regular meeting, Mike, on I'm going to say it's the 12th, but I don't. Okay, so let's go with the 14th then. That actually was going to be a council meeting night, but I think this meeting is probably gonna be longer than what you would think, to be able to have a meeting followed by a business meeting. And so what I'm suggesting is that the city council have just one regular meeting in September, which would be on the 21st.
Okay.
A few other items,
Just
sorry?
a little note, when you were on Goodrich, I don't know how many people realize or have heard, but Gary Loftus, the VP of Goodrich, was killed in an automobile accident on July 4th. He had a 9-year-old child with him. The child is okay, but Gary was killed in the accident. His wife was in another vehicle following and witnessed the whole thing. So we send our condolences to Goodrich and the Goodrich family, and along with Gary's family. So very sorry to hear about that information. Thank you.
Other items, I had mentioned before that I was involved with an equalized grand list appeal, which drives the educational tax rate. That appeal was denied. I have followed up with an appeal to the evaluation board. My calculations are that the way that they're handling our industrial properties, because they believe that the sales ratio on our commercial properties should be applied to our industrial properties, even though we have had no industrial property sales. I cannot convince them, I was not able to convince the director of property valuation and review that that's not fair. And I really believe that our appraisal that we did in 2007 has more credibility than some sales of half a dozen commercial properties that occurred over the last 3 years. So I have filed an appeal before the Valuation Review Board. My calculation is that, you know, I wanted to see what I was fighting for, because, you know, if I'm appealing over $12.30, I'll stay in my office. But I ran a calculation, and based on my calculation of what the taxpayers in Vergennes are paying, because the state is claiming that our industrial properties, that we are assessing our industrial properties at 93% of value, when I believe that we are assessing our industrial properties at 100% of value. The result on that is that our property taxpayers are collectively paying a $37,000 penalty. Your education rates are all higher because of that disagreement that I have with Property Valuation and Review. I can't walk away from this. I tried to walk away from it, but once I ran that calculation, it just is not fair, in my opinion, for them to feel that they can just simply apply the commercial ratio to industrial properties. Certainly in Vergennes, they aren't the same. Commercial properties in Vergennes not only include your typical commercial properties like your block, Zig, or the Merchants Bank. It includes all properties that have more than 5 residences in it, and so therefore the properties of any of these apartment buildings, Creekview Apartments, any of them, we log them in as being commercial properties. There is no similarity between Creekview Apartments and BF Goodrich or Country Owned Products. I have not been able to convince folks of that through PV&R, and so I just feel that I have to bring that to the next level. Unfortunately, you all have your bills, all right? Even if I win an appeal, I do not want to tell Joan that she's got to send out 927 new bills, but I still can't walk away from the $37,000, so I don't know if I end up being successful in this appeal. I'm not really sure what happens, all right? But I would hope that we are made whole somehow, and the taxpayers are made whole the following year, but I don't really know exactly how that works. Bond proceeds, I just want to let you know that Joan was wired $400,000 yesterday or Friday or something, Joan. And so we will be cutting a check. We actually cannot, we didn't know about this obviously on Friday, but we need to pay back the Merchants Bank, Christine, the $400,000.
Get it into the system till we close their books, and we couldn't.
So we're gonna
close
have to
their
cut a
books
check
till today.
ASAP to pay, because we can't commit what's called arbitrage. We can't be holding on to this cheap money. We have to return it. So So I just want to report that. The planning grant, as you know, we got the planning grant, and I signed the grant agreement the other day, and I put out prepared an RFP for approval by the Planning Commission last night. There'll be a notice in the newspaper, and Adam Luigi is going to provide me with a list of consultants that typically bid on these projects. Obviously, Landworks will be certainly one of the bidders. Relative to the downtown grant, I just received that grant agreement, and I'm going to be sending that back, and I need to make a trip up. Norman has completed his work on there was some additional detail work that was required for the Linda's apparel, but I do have that finalized, and I just need to get a construction permit and get that out to bid so that we can at least get bids for a project that would start in early September. Verizon Wireless, if you've driven on North Street, you'll notice that Verizon Wireless is building their building. There was a little accident involved the other day where some kind of a machine that they used to put this building together. They used a 2x4 as a chalk or whatever, and the machine jumped the 2x4 and ran into Ryan's building. And so that's why Peter Welch is working up there. I mean, actually, the guy it really could have been a terrible, terrible thing, because this guy wrote it out.
Was that Blue Genie?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, if you look out in front of City Hall, you'll see a divot in the
I saw
pavement.
that, yeah.
I think the guy actually came down through, and the forks are bouncing and bouncing, and I think he actually stuck one of the forks in the pavement.
That's what that hole is, all right?
Yep.
Lastly,
So,
you noticed there was a check in there, and I lose track, I think it's called Vermont Technologies or whatever it's called, VTech. The fire truck is done. Christine had some pictures at the last meeting. Patrick Crowley and a couple other firemen are grabbing this check tomorrow midday. The insurance is all set on the truck. I got a revised certificate today, so that truck, as Patrick Crowley says, I'm going to bring the check up, and I'm either coming back with the check or coming back with the truck. So I'm hoping he comes back with the truck. So all that will be done.
Little something about this truck, they took it to a show not too long ago, and one of the big points that they were pointing out, because of the big expense it is to communities to build a new truck, this is where you buy used vehicles and put pieces together, and you do it for a lot smaller fee to the community. So and I guess they got, how many hits? 16 hits, 8 hits? They got several hits from different communities that were interested in finding out more details from this particular individual that was showing it. So we've started a new trend. Ralph, at it again. Okay, senior housing.
Oh, senior housing? Senior housing. You may have read something in the Addison Independent, because I think, Andy, you did a report. John did a report on that. The HUD money did come through, and the HUD money came through a little bit more than what was requested, which was a nice thing. I think they requested like $1,150,000, and they ended up with $1,300,000 or something of HUD money, coupled with the $500,000 CDBG. Andy, you may know the combination of dollars there.
I just got back from vacation.
Okay, so anyway, the key to the thing is it's a go. And Terry, what they're doing now is really scurrying to get the architectural work done and get the bids out so that we can have a groundbreaking for this fall. I mean, that was always the goal, but, obviously we were fearful that we were gonna lose a construction season here, so there's no guarantees at this point, but I know I met with Terry the other day, and that's their goal, is to break ground and do a lot of whatever construction they can do in the fall and obviously through the winter. And I know the original plan was to get that opened up in May of 2011. Now, whether or not we're still on that track, I don't know, but it's a go. So
Good.
that's good.
Real good news. Okay. On to new business, Sam Fishman Pool, we're learning day by day, different
Yep.
things that are popping up, and here's one that came to light.
Roland, I tell you, Roland's a great employee. He comes to City Hall every day and brings money. It's a good little job for him and us, and he's doing a great job. But as Mike says, we run into something new every day, and I do feel bad that we didn't, Joe, flush out all of these little things when we're doing all this, and maybe it made it easier for us to do it this way. But one of the things that the pool has historically offered is to sell half-year passes, and tomorrow is the halfway. Actually, today is the halfway point, and so I told Roland that before we can offer half-year passes, I need to get the city council to authorize the sale of a half-season pass at a half-season rate.
I make said motion.
Okay, I got I think Randy get it out first. You want a second, Ziggy? We have a motion and a second to sell half-season passes at half-season rate. Discussion.
Question, half-season rate means 50% of the full season rate?
Right.
That's correct. You want it to be more, Joe? I thought about it.
Traditionally, you buy a spring pass at a ski area, it's
Yeah.
like 75% of the full season rate.
Well, I actually thought about it, that, maybe shouldn't a half-season be 60%
Yeah.
or something like that. I thought about it and thought, well, let's, maybe we should,
I have
something
no
we should.
opinion. I have no opinion, I just wondered what your,
Yeah.
I certainly feel like 50% is fine.
Certainly what I would not want, and one of the reasons why I would want something more than 50% is what I don't want people to do is to take advantage of that situation, and families end up saying, listen, we're just gonna buy you we're gonna buy you a half-season pass, you gotta wait until July 21st, all right?
Right.
And so what you wanna do is not have that be, I don't wanna
An
sell a
incentive.
lot of these, I really don't,
Yeah.
all right? I want that rate to be, 60%, 70%, so, I don't have a problem for this year setting it at 50, but I think it really is something to think about.
So I would request that we add to the motion that this is a one-time deal, and we revisit the half-year pass rate when we do the review for the,
Don't we review the rates every year, so we can add next year we can?
I think that
We're in a learning curve.
Yeah, well,
I thought you were gonna do this.
did I say, I think I only gave out two, Mike, and this is the third. Actually, this is not something you have to take
Okay.
any action on. What I will,
So we
Okay,
got
just-
this motion on.
So we still have a motion on it, we haven't voted on it. So Joe has asked for an amendment to that.
But every year we revisit rates, so we should be able to cover it. We just say we're not gonna offer.
Okay,
this
so you're
next year.
denying his request?
Just pull it back, retract.
No, he's asked for to review that. It's gonna be reviewed anyways.
right.
Right.
But it's gonna be reviewed anyways, so, I think, are you happy with that? It's gonna be reviewed anyways, so we'll leave the motion as it stands. Any other further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Mel?
Two things related to B. In your packets, I believe we gave you a copy of, in essence, the revised budget. And I should have given this sheet with it so that you didn't have to go searching for how the $20,000 got allocated. So that's what this sheet is. If you're wondering which line items got changed that accumulate to the $20,000, these are the line items. And even though I've titled this thing FY 2011 budget adjustments, that is true. However, these really are wage-related line items that got changed, and there was obviously one other line item that you changed on the expense side, which was the paving line item that went from 85,000 to the 150. So there isn't a notation about that. Relative to the other thing that I want to mention to you that actually relates to this second line where it says required adjustment in local tax rate for 2011. At the last meeting, when the city council adopted the budget, with the changes for wage adjustments and the changes for paving, you set a total rate of the same as last year of .6030. That's what you set. The fact of the matter is that that rate is actually divided into two parts. There's the city part and the so-called local share part. The city council really does not have any control over the local share part. The local share part is how that local share part is calculated. It's based on, you take the 7 properties in Vergennes that have a veterans exemption of $40,000. $10,000 of the $40,000 is absolutely, is exempt. There's no issue with the 10. However, the difference between the 40,000 and the 10, that $30,000, under the law, the state requires a municipal recapture of the lost educational funds on that $30,000. So if you have 7 properties with $30,000 of recapturable assessment multiplied times the homestead rate, it equals some number, $2,300, whatever that is. The other thing that they require is that any voted property tax exemptions, except for rescue squads, and we have one. We have a voted property tax exemption for the Masonic Hall, and that assessment is $187,100. So the point is that if you take, and that is multiplied times the non-residential rate. So the point is that last year the local rate was .0023. Now I am a little ways away from the decimal point, but that's what it calculates. That $4,900 in lost education funds has to be recaptured, and the way that you recapture it is you make every taxpayer pay an additional .0023 to capture that amount of money. Well, the education rates went up. We did not have that information for you when you held your meeting on June 29th. We didn't get that information until the 1st or 2nd of July. And obviously, the education rates, both homestead and non-residential, went up. And therefore, .0023 is not enough to cover what needed to be recaptured. The amount of the rate that was needed to recapture was .0025. So if you take your magnifying glass out and look at the property tax bill that you received, it does not say a sum of .6030. It says .6032, and that extra 2 is to cover that increased recapture amount due to the local share. Now, the other thing that I want to also point out in the budget that you adopted, we talked about how we needed $116,000 of our $180,000 cash carryover to keep our rate the same. And there's a few things that have occurred. One is because we lost the equalized grand list appeal, which clearly affects the valuation for Green Mountain Power and Velco, we lost value in those properties. There was also 9 other properties that went through grievance, and when you total all that up, we did lose a few $1,000s. Now, the other thing that Joan and I uncovered was if you look at last year's budget, and if you have that in front of you, I want to show you something. Anyway, the first line item on property taxes in last year's budget was $1,279,473, and you can see that the actual was $1,275,993, a difference of about $4,000. All right, and the reason why there ended up being a difference is because there has been a misunderstanding of that line item in your budget. I think that all of this time that when you have kind of felt as if you set this local share rate, this $4,900 that needs to be recaptured, I think you felt that you were the ones that were really raising it, and therefore it had to be included in that line item, and that's not how it works. What happens is we actually get billed, Joan gets billed, a final bill from the education department to pay the school. So the point is that we really didn't bill enough, because we did not, we thought that we were gonna be able to receive this, we were going to receive this money, and the money obviously wasn't billed and therefore wasn't received. Now, why this has never shown up in the past is, you notice the line item, Joan mentioned to you at one point that the state sends you this education tax service fee, this $5,026. And when Joan talked to me about that, I said, well, geez, I mean, that's a lot of money. We ought to be having we should have a line item for that and show it, not just dump it in the till. Well, what happened is that the education tax service fee, which historically was dumped in with the property taxes, was almost identical to the local share recapture amount. So we never felt like we didn't get the proceeds from taxing the .0023. It was because it was covered up with this other $5,000. So once Joan separated that $5,000, we ended up being short up there on the property taxes. So now that we know that, what ended up happening is that .0025 is not coming, it's not the municipalities, it isn't. We're just collecting it to give it to the schools. It's really a part of our school payment. So therefore, to figure out how much taxes you're gonna collect for municipal purposes, you can't include the .0025. You take the grand list, multiply it times, whatever the number is, whatever the difference between 6032 is and minus the .0025, and that actually dropped our tax number down to this $1,279,635, and therefore, what ended up resulting in is that instead of using $116,000 of the cash carryover, we need to use $125. And when you turn over to page on page 5, that's where you see the general has an expenses over revenues of $125,000. That ended up, because when you take the grand list and multiply it times that rate, it doesn't generate enough money, and so the requirement from the fund balance goes from 116 to 125. And obviously that reduces our cushion, if you will, to about $55,000 as opposed to around $64,000 that we were talking about at the end of the month. So it has caused a reduction in that cushion.
I have a question. On this 40,000, who sets that? Was it the town or is it the state?
It's the voters.
The voters.
The way it
So
is,
we did it.
the way that it works is that by law, if a veteran files their certificate, they automatically get $10,000. The voters have the authority to increase that exemption to $40,000, right, Joan?
Yep.
And it was at one point, the law allowed a municipality to increase that to 20. That went in front of the voters approved it. The law got changed to increase that number to 40, that got put on the ballot, and that got approved.
Okay, so that's law, the state of Vermont law, telling us that we could do that.
That's correct.
But yet they want the money back.
Absolutely.
What's new?
Yeah,
Okay.
shaving themselves, the whole group up there.
Okay. Any questions, Mel?
That's all I had, Mike.
That's all?
That's it.
Okay, that's all. I have several items, I'll blow through them fairly fast. Michael Brown actually lives in Bristol, he's a member of New Haven Sodbusters. If you want to find out from the citizens if there's any interest in starting a horseshoe club or team here, we've installed one setup down at Falls Park, and if I need some help drilling a fairly large hole through a rock so I can finish installing a second one. There'll be a haunted forest meeting tomorrow evening, 6:30 at Falls Park, starting at 6:30, I said. Just to let you know, boating traffic has been down, but over the last few days, we've seen an increase. The city of Vergennes owes Marguerite Senecal a big thanks for her hard work on French Heritage Day. I personally met and talked to visitors from Connecticut, Massachusetts, Maine, New Hampshire, Quebec, Montreal, just to mention a few of the surrounding states. I mean, it was just, and they just thought this was the greatest thing. So, turnout was smaller than last year, but a lot of interest. Everybody had a great time. I'd also like to publicly thank Sue O'Daniels and the city band for the concert at Falls Park last Monday night. As usual, they did a superb job with their concert. I noticed, Joan.
Had a nice turnout down there too.
Did, yep. And the mosquitoes weren't bad.
No.
I was surprised at that part. Joan, I noticed a couple of people playing on a bandstand on Saturday night. Did somebody submit a request to use the bandstand? Yep, there was a guy playing a guitar and I guess it's a bass fiddle. Yeah, they were there and there was a couple people sitting and I pulled over on the side, sat and listened to them for a little bit and then I wandered home. I thought maybe somebody had, yeah, they were plugged into the power and using an amplifier and yeah, had just a half a dozen people sitting around listening. They were good, so, hey. Okay, and Ferrisburg is holding Ferrisburg Day this Saturday, starting at 10 a.m. and going till 5 p.m. They have a bunch of different events going out throughout the city. There's flyers around town. Please try to find time to stop and see them. Got an email today, make room in the vault. We got another case of wine coming this way, Vergennes wine. And I would like to say thanks to GMP and Northland Job Corps for sponsoring the lighting on the falls. We've finally pulled some stuff off the last few days. So, with that, I'd ask for a motion to adjourn. Randy got it out. Lowell seconded it. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? So carried.